In front of 3 dozen engineers, my boss, Mr. Albright, tore into my final report, accusing me of gross oversight. He slid the thick binder back across the polished conference table, sending it skidding into my chest. "You're a liability, Reynolds," he hissed, his eyes cold as marble. The room watched, silent. Dave's flight from Baton Rouge had landed early, a bonus in an already long week. The hum of the jet engines was still in his ears as he drove the familiar route from the airport, heading not directly home, but to the quiet familiarity of his office. He'd planned to text Sarah, let her know he was back, maybe grab some flowers from the shop near the grocery store, then surprise her. The thought of her smile, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners, made the exhaustion from the petrochemical plant seem a little less heavy. He pushed open his office door, the air inside still, smelling faintly of stale coffee and printer toner. His briefcase hit the floor with a soft thud. Before he could even pull out his phone, a shadow fell across the doorway. Mike Jensen, his lifelong friend and engineering colleague, stood there, his face tight, more lines etched around his eyes than usual. Mike stepped inside, deliberately closing the door behind him, the click resonating in the sudden quiet. "Rough week?" I asked, leaning back against the desk. My own muscles ached. "What's up? Is there a problem with the new reactor specs?" Mike shifted his weight, his gaze landing somewhere on the wall behind my head. He took a breath, letting it out slowly. "No, Dave, it's not work." My gut tightened. Mike wasn't one for dramatics, especially not in the office. "Then what is it?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. A faint flicker of something unreadable crossed Mike's face. He cleared his throat. It's about Sarah." The words hit me like a physical blow. My breath hitched. The air in the room suddenly felt too thin, too heavy. "Sarah?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. My mind raced, grabbing at explanations. An accident? A family emergency back in Ohio? Mike finally met my eyes, and I saw a deep sadness there, a resignation I couldn't place. She's messing with you, Dave, while you're on the road." The blood rushed to my head, a hot, angry wave. "What in God's name are you talking about, Mike?" My voice rose, cutting through the silence. "Is this some kind of sick joke? Because it's not funny." I pushed off the desk, taking a step toward him. "You know Sarah. You know us. How dare you?" Mike flinched, but he didn't back down. "I wouldn't say it if I didn't believe it, Dave. You know me, and you know your temper." His voice was low, laced with genuine regret. "Pete Anderson heard it from Tim Roberts. They saw her." He swallowed hard, more than once. My hands clenched into fists. Pete and Tim were two of the guys from the fabrication shop, always full of gossip, always looking for a story. This had to be some drunken fabrication, a twisted tale from a late-night bar. "Pete and Tim? Those loudmouths? This is ridiculous, Mike. You're out of your mind." I felt a tremor run through my body. "You need to leave. Now." Mike stood his ground, his shoulders slumped. He reached into his shirt pocket, pulling out a small, folded piece of paper. He laid it gently on my desk. "I know this is hard to hear. My cousin Mark went through something similar last year. This woman, she helped him. Brenda Hayes. She's discreet." I stared at the paper, the name Brenda Hayes printed neatly on it. An investigator. The implication hung in the air, cold and stark. My mind rebelled. Sarah. My Sarah. The woman I'd shared my life with for 10 years. The woman who laughed at my bad jokes and held my hand through every uncertainty. Mike, my oldest friend, the man who'd been the best man at my wedding, and he wouldn't lie, not about this, not to me. "Your cousin?" I asked, my voice strained. "How did that turn out?" Mike grimaced, the lines around his mouth deepening. "Divorce, messy. They share custody of the girls, but it's bitter, especially for the kids." He paused, looking at the floor. "It's never good, Dave. Never." He turned and left, the door closing softly behind him, leaving me alone in the silent office. The name Brenda Hayes seemed to hum on the air. I picked up the paper, feeling the weight of it, as if it contained all the ugly truths of the world. Crazy accusations. Mike's cousin. I felt a pang of sympathy for Mark, for anyone caught in such a situation. but mostly for the kids. Always the kids. My thoughts drifted to Sarah, to our home, to the plans we'd made. 3 kids, we'd said, laughing as we imagined a chaotic, noisy house full of life. It was a solid plan, a foundation we were building. The very idea of it all crumbling, of her doing something like this, was unthinkable. It had to be a mistake, a malicious rumor. I crumpled the paper with Brenda Hayes' name into a tight ball and tossed it into the wastebasket. As I drove home, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the highway, I tried to push Mike's words out of my head. They clung like burrs, irritating and persistent, but I fought them back. It was a ridiculous lie. Sarah was waiting for me. We would share a quiet evening. Just us. I pulled into the grocery store parking lot determined. Flowers and a bottle of her favorite Cabernet. Nothing would be different. Nothing at all. The familiar scent of Sarah's jasmine perfume hit me the moment I opened the front door. She was there, her smile wide, a glass of wine in her hand. "You're back," she exclaimed, her voice bright with genuine pleasure. She wrapped her arms around my neck, pulling me into a hug that was both warm and insistent. I held her close, feeling the familiar comfort of her body, but Mike's words, "She's messing with you," whispered at the edge of my hearing. Our kiss was deep, passionate, like so many others, yet for the first time I was analyzing it, searching for a false note, a subtle hesitation in her touch. Over dinner, I watched her. Her eyes, usually so open and direct, seemed no different. Her laughter at my half-hearted joke sounded authentic. She talked about her day, a difficult client call, a new recipe she tried. Everything was normal, perfectly normal. That normalcy, though, was a new kind of torture. It made my suspicions feel cruel, an injustice to her apparent innocence. Still, the seed Mike had planted refused to wither. It burrowed deeper, a tiny burning ember in my chest. Later that evening, after Sarah had fallen asleep, her breathing soft and even beside me, I slipped out of bed. In the quiet of the guest room, I pulled out my phone. My fingers hesitated over the contact Mike had given me. Brenda Hayes. The name felt alien, heavy with implications. I took a deep breath. "Hello, Ms. Hayes," I began, my voice a low murmur. "My name is Dave. I was referred to you by a friend. A friend of mine needs some help. A sensitive situation." The lie felt clumsy, tasted like ash. Brenda's voice on the other end was calm, professional, and entirely devoid of judgment. She asked a few precise questions, her tone businesslike, cutting through my awkwardness. "I understand," she said. "I can take a look. Let's schedule a time to talk properly. Get the details." Her directness was both reassuring, knowing I was finally taking action, and terrifying, confirming that this was a real thing, a path I was now walking. The following day, I met Brenda in a nondescript office building downtown. The blinds were drawn, the room quiet. I laid out what I knew, or thought I knew, about Sarah's routine. Her gym schedule, her volunteer work at the animal shelter, her occasional lunch dates with friends. Each detail felt like a betrayal, a piece of her life I was offering up to be scrutinized, dissected. Brenda listened, taking notes, her expression unreadable. She asked about Sarah's car, her usual routes, any new habits. I answered, my voice steady, my stomach a knot of nerves. Maintaining normalcy at home became an exhausting performance. Every shared meal, every evening on the couch, felt like a scene in a play where I was the only actor who knew the true script. The guilt was a constant companion, a dull ache beneath my ribs. I'd smile, I'd nod, I'd ask about her day, all while my mind raced, cataloging, questioning. One evening, Sarah mentioned, "Oh, I've been spending more time with Janice lately. She's got me hooked on that new yoga studio downtown." Janice was a casual acquaintance, someone I'd only met a couple of times. The words were innocent, but for me they were a fresh sting, a new activity, a new friend. My gut clenched. I forced a casual, "Oh, really? That's nice." A week later, Brenda called. Her voice was flat, professional. "We're observing, Dave, nothing definitive yet, just establishing patterns." The report was vague, exactly what she'd said it would be, but I had hoped, unreasonably, for something, anything, to either confirm or deny. The wait continued, a slow, agonizing crawl. Sleep became a battlefield. I tossed and turned, fragments of nightmares chasing me through the dark. Sarah's face, distorted, laughing with someone I couldn't see. Mike's grim expression. I woke up each morning feeling more exhausted than when I'd gone to bed. My focus at work suffered. I snapped at a junior engineer, then spent the rest of the day apologizing. My mood was a live wire. I found myself pulling away from Sarah, unconsciously at first, then deliberately. Less physical contact, fewer lingering touches. I kept my conversations with her superficial, afraid that if I dug too deep, my true feelings, my suspicions, would spill out. The emotional distance was growing, a chasm opening between us. Sarah noticed. One Tuesday night, as we were clearing the dinner table, she stopped, putting her hand on my arm. Dave, is everything all right? You've been quiet? Is something going on at work? Her eyes were soft, concerned. I forced a smile, a practiced movement. Just a new project, honey. Lots of moving parts. It's got me a little stressed. The lie felt easy, too easy. A few days later, she told me she was going to the gym. I'll be back in an hour or so, going to catch a late class. Later, I saw her car parked a few blocks away from the gym, outside a coffee shop she rarely frequented, 2 hours after she said she'd be home. It was a small thing, easily explainable. Maybe she'd stopped for coffee with Janice, but my mind, already primed for treachery, latched onto it. An innocuous lie, perhaps, but it stirred the muddy waters of my mind even further. Evenings now were a solitary ritual. After Sarah was asleep, or out with Janice at the yoga studio, I sat at the kitchen table, poring over the details Brenda had asked for. Phone records, credit card statements. Small facts that used to mean nothing now loomed large, demanding scrutiny. I felt increasingly isolated, trapped in this secret world I had created. Every incoming call on Sarah's phone, every late return sent a jolt of ice through my veins. The waiting was an agony, a constant hum of dread beneath the surface of my skin. The phone rang just after 9 on a Tuesday morning. I was at my desk, trying to focus on a new project proposal, but the words on the screen blurred. It was Brenda Hayes. Her voice, when I answered, was as crisp and professional as ever. But there was a distinct lack of the usual vagueness. Dave, she began, I have some concrete information for you. My hand tightened around the receiver. My breath caught in my throat. She didn't waste words. Your wife, Sarah, is involved with another man. His name is Jim Stone. We have confirmed the affair. The simple, declarative sentences landed like blows. She continued, detailing times, dates, and locations. Last Friday, 3 p.m. to 5:30 p.m., at the Bayfront Inn, room 312. The specificity was brutal. We have photographs. She told me she'd emailed a preliminary report. My fingers, numb, fumbled with the mouse, opening the attachment. The first image appeared on my screen. Sarah. Her hair was down, a little disheveled. She was laughing, her head thrown back, a man's arm around her waist. His face was blurred from the angle, but the intimacy of the pose was unmistakable. Then another picture, clearer this time. Sarah getting into a car in a deserted parking lot behind a restaurant. The same man was holding the car door open for her. His profile was visible, dark hair, a clean-cut look. My world, a solid structure built on years of shared history, began to tilt. One of the locations Brenda mentioned, a small cafe downtown, was where Sarah had claimed to be meeting Janice for coffee last week, the very day I'd seen her car near it. The innocent lie now replayed itself, not as a casual omission, but as a deliberate shield. Brenda continued, her voice a steady stream of facts. We've cross-referenced phone records, numerous calls and texts outside of normal hours. Consistent pattern over the last 3 months. 3 months. My mind reeled. 3 months of shared dinners, quiet evenings, casual touches, all while this other life was unfolding. The depth of it, the duration felt like a physical weight pressing down on my chest. A wave of shock washed over me, a cold drenching. My first instinct was denial. No, this couldn't be Sarah. Not my Sarah. But the photographs, stark and irrefutable, mocked that thought. Then came the pain, a searing, white-hot agony that started in my gut and spread outward, dissolving everything. My vision blurred. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the images, the facts, the crushing reality. "Dave, are you still there?" Brenda's voice brought me back. "Yes," I managed, the word a dry rasp. "Yes, I'm here. I'll send you the full report with all the details and unedited photographs. We can discuss next steps whenever you're ready." "Thank you, Brenda," I said, and then without another word, I hung up the phone. A cold numbness settled over me. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. The pictures on the screen seemed to mock me. I remembered Sarah years ago when we first started dating. She had called herself a free spirit, always wanting new adventures. But after we got serious, she'd said, "Those days are behind me, Dave. I want a real life, a solid future. With you." The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth, sharp as bile. I needed to talk to Mike. I drove to his office, the world outside a blur of colors. He looked up when I entered, seeing my face, his own features tightening. I sat across from him, pushing the preliminary report across his desk. He read it, his expression a mix of sadness and a quiet resignation. He didn't say, "I told you so." He just looked at me, his gaze steady. "I'm sorry, Dave," he said, his voice low. "I truly am." He offered a silent, solid presence, an anchor in the storm. "Jim Stone," I repeated, the name foreign and repulsive on my tongue. Brenda had given me his full name, his profession, a local businessman, runs a chain of auto dealerships. While Mike went back to his work, I pulled out my phone, typed the name into a search engine. Photos of him appeared. A smiling man in a suit, shaking hands at a Chamber of Commerce event. A picture of him with his wife, looking respectable, successful, a pillar of the community. The dissonance was jarring. The thought of confronting Sarah, of stripping away the layers of lies, filled me with a sickening dread. But beneath the dread, a slow, insistent burn of rage began to smolder. What would I say? How could I even look at her? I kept reviewing the evidence, scrolling through the pictures again and again, searching for any flicker of doubt, any angle that might suggest a misunderstanding. But there was none. Each image, each timestamp, each detail only cemented the truth. I went home. The house was quiet, empty. Once a sanctuary filled with the echoes of shared laughter and quiet evenings, it now felt vast and hollow. A tomb built on lies and shattered dreams. The air felt stale, heavy with unspoken betrayals. I waited for Sarah. The full report from Brenda Hayes lay on the kitchen table, pages fanned out, photographs face up. Each image, each timestamp, a nail in the coffin of our life together. The house was too quiet, every tick of the clock amplifying the frantic pounding of my heart. The air felt thick, charged with the inevitable. The sound of her key in the lock, the familiar creak of the front door. Sarah stepped inside, a grocery bag hooked over her arm. She smiled, a bright, easy smile that died on her lips the moment she saw me. My face, I knew, was a mask of grim determination. Her eyes dropped to the table, to the scattered papers. Her breath hitched. The grocery bag slid from her hand, hitting the floor with a soft thud, a carton of eggs rolling out. "Sarah," I began, my voice a strained whisper, unfamiliar even to my own ears. "We need to talk about Jim Stone." The color drained from her face, leaving her pale, almost translucent. Her eyes widened, a flicker of fear replacing the confusion. She stammered, "Jim? What? What are you talking about, Dave? I cut her off. "Don't bother, Sarah. It's all here." I gestured to the table, my hand trembling slightly. The dates, the times, the locations, the pictures. My voice was flat, devoid of emotion, a deliberate effort to keep from shattering. "Brenda Hayes is very thorough." She glanced at the photos, her gaze snagging on one of her, smiling, too close to another man. Her shoulders slumped. The denial died on her lips, replaced by a ragged sob. She collapsed into a chair, burying her face in her hands. "Dave, I can explain." "Explain what?" My voice rose, a sharp, ragged edge I hadn't known it possessed. "Explain how you could lie to me for 3 months. Explain how you could meet another man in hotels. Explain how you could destroy everything we built, everything we planned. My anger, long simmering beneath the surface, boiled over, hot and visceral. Our future, Sarah. Our family. You just threw it all away. She looked up, her face tear-streaked. It, it didn't mean anything, David. It was a mistake. I was lonely. You're always traveling. She wrung her hands. It was just a misunderstanding. Lonely? I scoffed, a bitter, humorless sound. A misunderstanding? You call 3 months of secret meetings in hotel rooms a misunderstanding? Didn't mean anything? My voice was a shout now, echoing in the quiet house. You think I'm a fool? You think I'm stupid enough to believe that? Please, Dave, she pleaded, her voice raw. I'm so sorry. I messed up. It's just, he paid attention when you were gone. Why Sarah? Why him? The question ripped from me, a desperate plea for understanding in the face of profound betrayal. Why did you do this to us? She shrugged, a small, helpless gesture that ignited another spark of fury in me. I don't know. I was unhappy. I felt stifled. I needed excitement, something new. Her eyes avoided mine, tracing patterns on the table. Her reasons felt flimsy, cheap, like flimsy excuses for a broken child. It left me feeling emptier than before, the betrayal deepening. The conversation descended into a torrent of bitter accusations and raw, unadulterated emotional pain. Her apologies felt hollow, swallowed by the sheer enormity of her deceit. My accusations, though true, felt like daggers in the ruins of our life. I don't even know you, I said, my voice quiet now, the anger replaced by a chilling realization. The woman I married, the woman I built a life with, she doesn't exist. This whole marriage, it feels like a lie. I couldn't be in the same room as her. Not anymore. Not now. I stood up, pushed my chair back with a harsh scrape against the tile floor. I grabbed a small duffel bag from the closet, stuffing in a few essentials. The spare bedroom felt too close, too temporary. Mike's couch. That would do for a while. As I walked out, leaving her sobbing in the kitchen, her desperate pleas following me, my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, then another. I didn't look. I blocked her number. There was nothing more to say, nothing more to hear. The news I knew would spread. Quietly at first, through the small circles of friends and family. Mike already knew. He'd tell his wife, who would tell her sister. Ripples of shock and concern, then judgment. But I didn't care. Not now. All I felt was the crushing weight of what had been lost. I spent the first few nights at Mike's place. His couch was lumpy, but the quiet of his guest room, away from the suffocating silence of my own house, was a temporary relief. Mike didn't press for details, didn't offer platitudes. He just made sure there was coffee in the morning and a beer in the evening. A steady, unyielding presence. My mind, though, was a relentless churn. Two paths lay before me. Divorce, a clean break, or reconciliation, an attempt to rebuild on shattered ground. Both felt equally impossible, equally painful. The children we'd planned, the three little faces I'd imagined running through our yard, now existed only as ghosts, haunting the wreckage of our shared future. The image of Sarah laughing with another man eclipsed all the happy memories, poisoning them. My phone buzzed constantly. Texts from Sarah, long, rambling apologies, promises to change, declarations of love. How much she missed me, how sorry she was, how it was a mistake she regretted every second. I read a few, then deleted them, the words feeling hollow, an insult to the depth of the betrayal. I made an appointment with a lawyer Brenda Hayes had recommended. Her office was in a sleek, modern building, far removed from the emotional turmoil of my life. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Mrs. Davies, laid out the cold, hard facts: asset division, potential alimony, the legal complexities of disentangling a decade of shared life. The financial implications alone were daunting, a stark, practical consequence of Sarah's actions. The thought of facing the town, the whispers, the knowing glances, gnawed at me. My career, my reputation, all felt vulnerable. This was a small community, where everyone knew everyone, and secrets rarely stayed secret for long. One evening, Mike sat with me on his porch watching the stars. "Mark, my cousin," he said, staring out into the darkness. "He's still dealing with it. 3 years on. The bitterness, it just eats at him. And the kids, they still feel it, stuck in the middle. It changes you, Dave, Demo." Something like this. His words were a sobering perspective, a glimpse into the long, unyielding shadow infidelity casts. I started therapy. The therapist, a quiet woman named Dr. Evans, listened patiently as I recounted the facts, the shock, the anger. It felt clinical, removed, but slowly, painfully, I began to process the trauma, the confusion that had taken root in my mind. A few days later, I saw Jim Stone. He was leaving the local country club, getting into his luxury SUV. A sudden, irrational impulse seized me. I parked my truck and walked over, my heart hammering. "Jim Stone?" I asked, my voice tight. He turned, a bland, polite expression on his face. "Yes?" "I'm Dave Reynolds, Sarah's husband." His eyes widened almost imperceptibly, then narrowed. A flicker of something, recognition, perhaps a hint of unease, passed through them. But then he straightened, his posture shifting, a subtle arrogance hardening his features. "Look, Dave," he said, his voice smooth, dismissive. "Whatever happened between Sarah and me, it was between consenting adults." He shrugged, a gesture of casual disregard. "It's not complicated." He slid into his car, started the engine, and drove away, leaving me standing in the parking lot, the exhaust fumes stinging my nose. The encounter with Jim left me hollow, powerless. Yet oddly, it hardened my resolve. His lack of remorse, his dismissive attitude cemented the truth. This was not some accident, some fleeting mistake. This was a calculated choice. Sarah's next attempt to win me back was a grand gesture. A home-cooked meal, my favorite, laid out on the dining table, candles lit, a bottle of expensive wine. She looked beautiful, dressed in something she knew I liked. But the sight of it, the forced performance, only deepened my disgust. It was too little, too late. The chasm between us was too wide, too deep. I eventually moved back into the house. It was a practical decision. Staying at Mike's indefinitely wasn't feasible. But our lives were separate, two strangers sharing a roof. A chilling silence hung between us, punctuated only by necessities. We spoke in low tones, about bills, about mundane chores, never about us. Friends, hearing snippets of the truth, tried to intervene. Some, like Mike's wife, gently suggested counseling, pushing for reconciliation. Others, more pragmatic, advised me to move on, to cut my losses. Each piece of advice, well-meaning as it was, only made me feel more isolated. I couldn't truly confide in anyone without feeling judged. Or worse, pitied. It was a burden I had to carry alone. Slowly, painfully, I began the process of detaching. I stopped looking at her when she spoke. I started planning my own meals, my own evenings. I mentally sorted through our shared possessions, imagining them divided. The dreams of our future had died, and now I was preparing for a life that would be distinctly, irrevocably mine. Stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. The papers were filed. I handed Sarah the official documents one Tuesday evening, just as she was coming in from work. Her face, already drawn from weeks of strained silence, crumpled as she read the top line. Petition for dissolution of marriage. She looked at me, her eyes brimming, a mix of sadness and a quiet resignation. "You're really doing this, Dave," she whispered. "There's nothing left, Sarah," I replied, my voice flat. "It's over." The legal proceedings began their slow, grinding crawl. Discovery, demands for financial records, endless emails between lawyers. Each piece of paper, each required discussion about our shared life, felt like a fresh wound. The house we'd bought, the furniture we'd picked out, the savings we'd accumulated, all now reduced to line items, figures to be negotiated. It was a cold, clinical dissection of a decade of life. I found myself reliving the betrayal in the most mundane ways, every asset linked to a memory that was now tainted. Sarah contested a few things: the antique dresser her grandmother had given us, the division of a small investment account. It wasn't about the objects themselves, I knew, but about prolonging the fight, the last vestiges of a dying relationship. Each contested point only served to deepen the animosity, drawing out the pain. The thought of moving on, of dating again, felt distant and impossible. The fear of future betrayal, of opening myself up to that kind of pain again, was a heavy cloak. Who could I trust? How could I ever be sure? My work performance, usually steady, began to show cracks. My focus was fragmented, my mind constantly returning to legal deadlines or Sarah's latest demand. A missed detail on a design, a late report, small things but noticeable. My boss, Mr. Albright, called me into his office, his expression concerned. "Everything all right at home, Dave?" I mumbled something about personal issues, work stress. He nodded, gave me a sympathetic look, but I knew he was watching. I found solace in solitary activities. Long drives in my old pickup truck, the windows down, the wind rushing past, blurring the world. Solitary fishing trips to the quietest corners of the lake, the rhythmic cast and reel, a mindless, calming rhythm. Working on the truck itself, the grease and the grit, the tangible problem solving, a welcome escape from the intangible mess of my life. My family, when I finally told them, were heartbroken. My mother cried, my father just squeezed my shoulder, his face grim. "We're here for you, son," he said, "whatever you need." Their support, quiet and unwavering, was a lifeline. They didn't preach, didn't offer advice on reconciliation. They simply stood by my decision. The emotional toll, however, was manifesting physically. Sleepless nights were common, my mind racing through arguments that would never happen, scenarios that would never play out. My appetite dwindled. Food tasted like ash. A constant, dull knot of anxiety lived in my stomach, a persistent reminder of the chaos. Sarah, I heard through mutual friends, was expressing deep regret for her actions, not just to me, but to others. She was trying to salvage her reputation, perhaps, or maybe it was genuine. Regardless, the damage was done. The whispers followed her, too, affecting her social standing, the network of friends we had shared. Then came another piece of news, delivered by Mike, who'd heard it from his cousin. Jim Stone's marriage was also fracturing. His wife had found out, not through Brenda Hayes, but through gossip that eventually reached her. He was now facing his own consequences, his respectable facade cracking. A grim satisfaction settled over me, brief and fleeting. It wasn't peace, not true peace, but a small measure of justice. It didn't heal my wounds, but it felt like a score had been settled. The divorce proceedings dragged on, a seemingly endless journey. It drained me, financially and emotionally, each bill from the lawyer a fresh reminder of the cost of betrayal. But slowly, painstakingly, I began to rebuild, piece by painful piece. The first step was reclaiming my home. Sarah moved out, taking her possessions. When she was gone, I stood in the empty living room, the echoes of our past fading, and felt a tiny, fragile spark of something new. A beginning. The judge's gavel fell with a soft thud, a sound that marked both an ending and a beginning. The divorce was finalized. I walked out of the courthouse feeling an unsettling mix of relief and profound emptiness. The legal battle was over, the papers signed, but the emotional ledger remained stubbornly unbalanced. The marital home, once filled with the promise of a shared future, was now a monument to betrayal. Every room held a ghost, every corner a memory. I couldn't bear to stay. I put it on the market, sold it quickly, and bought a smaller, modest place on the outskirts of town. It was a fresh slate, a space unburdened by the past, but it felt cold, unfamiliar. Sarah, I heard, had moved out of state, seeking a fresh start far from the whispers and judgments of our shared community. She wanted to escape the ripple effect of her actions, to find a place where her past wasn't etched into every coffee shop conversation. For a time, an intense loneliness settled over me. Evenings in the new house were silent, the quiet amplifying every unanswered question, every doubt about my own choices. Had I been too trusting, too naive? I replayed conversations, searching for missed signals, for moments where I could have steered us differently. It was a painful, fruitless exercise. The news about Jim Stone filtered back through Mike. His auto dealerships, once thriving, were feeling the pressure of his damaged reputation. His wife had indeed filed for divorce, taking a significant chunk of his assets. The affair had cost him dearly, professionally and personally. There was a grim satisfaction in the knowledge, but it didn't bring peace. just a confirmation that actions had consequences, far-reaching and often unexpected. The infidelity's impact, I realized, extended far beyond Sarah and me. Friends had chosen sides, some awkwardly avoiding both of us, others offering uncomfortable condolences. Family members were hurt, confused. Even in our professional circles, there was an unspoken understanding, a shift in the air that was hard to pinpoint, but impossible to ignore. I buried myself in work. Long hours at the office, taking on extra projects, volunteering for trips to remote sites, the meticulous details of engineering projects, the clear logic of problem solving offered a temporary escape, a refuge in productivity. My mind, if occupied by blueprints and calculations, couldn't dwell on the emptiness of my evenings. Therapy continued, a slow, arduous process of excavating the pain, sifting through the anger, and gradually, cautiously, rebuilding trust, primarily in myself. Evans, patient and insightful, helped me navigate the labyrinth of my emotions. Mike remained a steadfast presence. He didn't offer grand gestures, just steady companionship. A call to check in, an invitation for a beer, an hour spent just sitting in comfortable silence. He was a rock, an anchor in the shifting sands of my life. The thought of a new relationship, of opening myself up to someone else, was a distant, frightening prospect. The scars of betrayal were deep, and the fear of repeating the past made me cautious, hesitant. How could I ever truly trust again? I often found myself reflecting on Sarah. Her early claim of being a free spirit, a phrase I had dismissed as youthful exuberance, now resonated differently. Was it a fundamental part of her nature, a restless dissatisfaction I had failed to see? Or was it a choice she made, a series of moral compromises? The answer remained elusive, a puzzle with missing pieces. Mike's cousin, Mark, was still battling the lingering effects of his own divorce. The bitterness, the co-parenting struggles, the deep-seated anger. It was a long, hard road, Mike said. Seeing Mark's ongoing struggle reinforced the notion that while the legal battle was over, the emotional journey was far from complete. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, I started to find joy in simple things again. The first cup of coffee on a quiet morning, watching the sunrise over my new, modest backyard, the subtle shift of the seasons, the crispness of autumn air, the vibrant green of spring. These moments, unburdened by expectation or shared history, felt real, restorative. But the idea of children, once a vibrant, shared dream, remained a persistent ache, a source of quiet sorrow and deep reflection. The vision of those three children running through a yard that was no longer mine faded a little more each day, replaced by the stark reality of a solitary future. Months bled into a year. The raw edges of grief softened, though they never quite disappeared. My life, once a predictable duet, now moved to a new solitary rhythm. The quiet of my smaller house no longer felt empty, but simply quiet. I dusted off my old guitar, fingers slowly reacquainting themselves with the fretboard, finding the familiar chords. I started drawing again, simple sketches of landscapes, of the lake, of moments of quiet beauty. Hobbies and interests I'd set aside during my marriage, believing I didn't have the time or the space for them, slowly returned, filling the hours with a sense of gentle purpose. I also began volunteering at the local animal shelter. The dogs and cats, innocent and unburdened by human complexities, offered a simple, unconditional connection. It felt good to contribute, to find purpose outside the confines of my personal grief, a small way to mend something. My relationship with Sarah was cordial, a thin, distant thread of communication limited strictly to practical matters. The finalization of a tax document, the division of a small, forgotten shared account. There was no warmth, no animosity, just a polite formality. Through the grapevine, the small town's unofficial news network, I heard snippets about Sarah's new life. It wasn't going well. She was struggling to find her footing, the fresh start proving harder than she'd imagined. The judgment she'd tried to escape had followed her, or perhaps it was simply the internal reckoning of her choices. A flicker of empathy, faint but present, sparked within me. She was still a human being, and her actions, though deeply hurtful, had also come at a cost to her. Jim Stone's decline continued. His business, I heard, was teetering on the edge, losing loyal customers and key employees. His reputation, once solid, was now in tatters. He was selling off assets, trying to stave off ruin. I revisited my understanding of justice. It wasn't a clean, decisive blow, but a slow, often messy unraveling. There was no triumphant feeling, just a complex realization that paying the price was rarely a simple transaction. I grappled with the concept of forgiveness, not for Sarah, not in the sense of excusing her actions, but for myself, for the anger that had consumed me, the resentment that had festered, the bitterness that had threatened to define me. It was a heavy burden, and I was tired of carrying it. I needed to release it, if only for my own peace. Mike's early advice about the long-term impact of betrayal echoed in my mind. He was right. It wasn't just the initial shock, the immediate pain. It was the enduring ripple, the way it altered paths, eroded trust, reshaped lives years down the line. Slowly, tentatively, I started to consider the possibility of a new relationship, a healthy, trusting one. The fear of betrayal still lingered. A phantom limb, but it no longer paralyzed me. I understood now that I couldn't control another person's choices, but I could control my own reactions, my own capacity for resilience. I came to accept that the pain, the scar of betrayal, might never fully disappear. It would always be a part of my story, but it no longer defined me. It was a chapter, not the whole book. I was more than just a betrayed husband. I was an engineer, a volunteer, a friend, a man who had weathered a storm. I often reflected on the concept of morality, how one seemingly impulsive moment, one selfish choice, could send ripples across so many lives, irrevocably altering their course. It was a sobering thought, a testament to the fragile interconnectedness of human lives. I found strength in my own resilience, in the quiet dignity of enduring hardship. I hadn't crumbled. I had bent, but not broken. That knowledge, quiet and profound, gave me a new foundation. I started writing again, not for anyone else, but for myself. A journal, tucked away in my desk drawer. I filled its pages with my thoughts, my feelings, the quiet observations of my healing journey. It was a way to process, to understand, to finally put words to the unspoken. 2 years. The number felt significant, a milestone passed. The initial wreckage of my life had long been cleared. The new house, though smaller, now felt like home, filled with my own choices, my own quiet peace. The frantic churn in my gut had settled into a steady hum. Life, genuinely, had found a new rhythm, altered but peaceful. I met Emily through my volunteer work at the animal shelter. She had a calm demeanor and eyes that held an honest kindness. Our conversations were easy, unforced, grounded in shared interests and a mutual respect. She understood the value of quiet, the comfort of simple evenings. We started slow, a coffee here, a walk by the lake there. My guardedness, a thick wall I had unknowingly built, chipped away slowly under her patient understanding. I found myself cautiously optimistic about the future, still keenly aware of the fragility of trust, but open, truly open, to love again. News of Sarah occasionally reached me, always through a third party. She had remarried quietly, in a different state. Mike heard it from a distant cousin of Sarah's. She was, apparently, attempting to build a stable life, to mend her own fractured path. I reflected on her journey, and my own. The raw, searing anger had largely faded, replaced by a quiet understanding of the human condition, of flawed choices and the long road of consequences. It wasn't forgiveness in the traditional sense, but a kind of release, a recognition that harboring bitterness only prolonged my own suffering. My closure wasn't found in her downfall, but in my own capacity for growth and recovery. Mike remained a constant. Our friendship, forged in childhood and tested by adult heartbreak, had deepened, becoming more resilient. We didn't talk about Sarah much anymore. The topic, a silent understanding between us. We spoke of work, of fishing, of the changing seasons. He was a good man, a true friend. The lessons learned from that painful chapter were etched deep. Lessons about trust, its profound value, and its inherent vulnerability. About love, its complexities, its ability to both uplift and devastate, and about the far-reaching consequences of choices, how one moment could ripple through countless lives. I continued to contribute to my community, a respected figure now, known not for my past troubles, but for a quiet strength forged in adversity. I coached a youth soccer team, helped organize local cleanup drives. It felt good to be a part of something larger than myself. I often thought about the definition of a good life. It wasn't about grand achievements or material wealth, I realized. It was about integrity, about honesty, about genuine connection with others. It was about living in alignment with what felt true and right. With Emily, the dreams of children, once buried beneath the rubble of my past, slowly began to rekindle. We spoke of it cautiously, a future possibility, a shared hope that felt real and honest. The scars of betrayal, though still present, no longer felt like open wounds. They were reminders, not of weakness, but of resilience, of a capacity to endure and to heal. I found myself often looking out over the familiar Midwestern landscape, the endless fields of corn and soybeans, the wide open sky that seemed to stretch forever. A deep sense of peace had settled over me, a quiet understanding that life in all its complicated, messy beauty continued. I was still Dave, grounded, pragmatic, an engineer who trusted facts and logic. But I had also found my way back to hope, a resilient, quiet hope, nurtured by time and by grace.